Well, excellent. Good evening and welcome. My name is Garrett Pryor. I will be in charge of technology for the event. I'm represented by the T of Tualatin here on the screen. Buenas noches y bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Garrett Pryor. Estará a cargo de la tecnología para este evento. We are offering a Spanish language option for this event.
Estamos ofreciendo una opción en español para este evento.
We are offering a Spanish language option for this event. If you would like to listen in Spanish, please click the interpretation button on the bottom of the screen and choose Spanish. If you would like to mute the presentation in English, click mute original audio. Estamos ofreciendo este evento en español. Si desea escuchar en español, haga clic en el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de la pantalla y elija español. Si desea silenciar la presentación en inglés, haga clic en silenciar audio original. We want to thank Armando Gutierrez for his help in translating this event in Spanish. Hello, Armando.
Con la traducción en español.
Queremos agradecer a Armando Gutierrez por su ayuda en la traducción de este evento al español. Hola, Armando.
Hola,
as an attendee, you will not be able to speak or we will not be able to view your video during the event, but please submit any questions or comments into the question or an answer chat, and one of our wonderful city staff will help answer that for you. I will now transition the presentation to our host for the night, Tualatin Senior Planner, Karen Pearl Fox. Karen, you can take it away.
Karen?
Thank you so much, Garrett.
Gracias, Garrett.
Welcome and good evening to everyone.
Buenas noches a
My
todos.
name is Karen Pearl Fox, and I'm the Senior Planner for the City of Tualatin. We are so pleased that you could join us tonight for this very special and timely event to discuss the housing health connection and to consider the barriers and possible solutions to severe housing rent burden. 2020 has been and continues to be a very challenging year for so many amidst a pandemic and most recently the devastating fires in Oregon. Our hearts and thoughts go out to families, households, and individuals that are struggling with matters related to housing insecurity, health, and loss during this time. To kick off this event, I would like now to turn it over to Tualatin's counselor, Maria Reyes, to provide us with the opening remarks. Thank you so much, Counselor.
Para que proporcione palabras de este evento.
Thank you, Karen. I was
Gracias,
muted.
Karen.
I'm so sorry. My cat keeps jumping
Les
and
pido perdón
interrupting
porque
me,
mi
and
gato
I don't know
sigue
what to do.
saltando aquí en mi
So
escritorio
I
y me interrumpe.
apologize if you see him.
Les pido
on
perdón
the
si
screen.
lo ven aquí.
Welcome and thank you for joining us
Bienvenidos y
tonight.
gracias
I am
por
Tualatin City
acompañarnos esta
Councilor
noche.
Maria Reyes.
Soy la
We want this
concejala
event,
de la
our
ciudad
home,
de
our
Tualatin,
health,
María
to be
Reyes.
engaging and
Queremos que
inclusive.
este evento, nuestro hogar,
We
nuestra
want this to
salud,
be
sea
a
un foro
forum where you
atractivo
can
e
deepen
incluso
and
para
where we can
profundizar
deepen our
nuestra
understanding of
comprensión
the impacts of
de los
severe rent
impactos de
burden,
la severa carga del
identify
alquiler,
barriers to reduce
identificar
rent
barreras para
burden, and
reducir
seek
la
out
carga del
solutions.
alquiler y buscar
The keynote speaker
soluciones.
tonight is
La
Bandana
oradora principal de esta
Shrestha,
noche es Bandana
Community Engagement
Shrestha,
Director of
directora de
Oregon
participación
AARP, who will
comunitaria de
speak about
Oregon
the connection between health
AARP,
and
quien
housing,
hablará sobre la
hence the
conexión entre
name
la
of the
salud y
event,
la
Our
vivienda.
Home,
De
Our Health.
ahí el nombre del evento,
Additionally,
nuestro
we will
hogar,
hear
nuestra
from
salud.
2 Tualatin residents
Además,
and members
escucharán
of
de
the
dos
city's
residentes de
Diversity Task
Tualatin y
Force
miembros del
about their
grupo de trabajo
experience
de diversidad de
renting
la
in the
ciudad
city.
sobre sus
Currently,
experiencias alquilando en la ciudad. En la
27.4% of
actualidad,
Tualatin
el
residents are severely
27.4% de los
rent
residentes de
burdened,
Tualatin
meaning they spend more
están
than half of their
gravemente
income
agobiados por
on
el
housing,
alquiler,
and
lo cual
50% of
significa que gastan más de la
households
mitad
in
de sus
Tualatin
ingresos en vivienda. Y el
are rent burdened but
56%
not
de los
severe.
hogares en
In
Tualatin
addition,
están
historically,
agobiados por el alquiler,
underrepresented
aunque no son
groups
severos.
are
Además, los
disproportionately
grupos históricamente
impacted by severe
subrepresentados
housing
se
rent
ven
burden.
afectados de manera
This event is
desproporcionada
intended
por
to
la
understand
severa
the
carga del
impacts
alquiler
of
de
severe
viviendas.
rent burden.
En este evento tiene
Again,
como
thank you for joining
objetivo
us, and I will
comprender
turn
los
it over to
impactos de la
Karen
sobrecarga del
Fox,
alquiler.
city
Una
staff,
vez,
to lead
gracias
the
por
presentation.
acompañarnos
Thank you,
y le
Karen.
haré la palabra a
Thank you so
Karen
much,
Fox.
Maria, for those very
Muchas
thoughtful
gracias,
and kind words.
concejal Reyes, por
Very
sus
much
palabras.
appreciated.
Los apreciamos muchísimo.
Garrett, do you have any other technical tips
Garrett,
that you would
¿tú
like
tienes
to
alguna
mention, or
información
shall we
técnica que
go
quieres
on to
mencionar
the next
o
segment?
quieres que sigamos al siguiente
I think we can
segmento?
go on to the next segment, Karen.
Okay, great.
Podemos seguir al
All
siguiente
right,
segmento,
so I'm
Karen.
going to give you a brief overview and
Entonces, yo
mention
les voy
who
a
the
dar
speakers
una
and panelists
descripción
are for this
general
event.
del
Maria
fijo
did
del
mention some
programa
of
con
them.
los oradores, los
I'd like to do
panelistas y
it
el personal de
comprehensively
la
so you
ciudad,
can get a good sense of what the flow
para
of
que
tonight
ustedes
will be
tengan
and what to
un
look
buen
forward to.
sentido del
So
flujo
our
del
first
programa.
program is the keynote
La
presentation
primera
from
parte va a
Bandana
ser la
Shrestha
presentación
from
principal
AARP, Oregon.
de
And we
Bandana
will
Shrestha
then be
de
skipping the next
AARP.
session segment that shows up on our program
La
that some of you
siguiente
have seen,
sección que
which
habla
was
de
small
una
group
discusión en
discussions,
grupos
but we will
pequeños
instead
para
pause
reflexionar.
briefly
Vamos a
after
tomar una
Bandana speaks
pauta
and allow for
después de que
questions to
Bandana
Bandana to be
termine
put
y
in the
podemos hacerle
Q&A box,
preguntas
which
a
we will then
Bandana
answer later in the event when we get
y
to the open
después
Q&A.
contestaremos esas
So
preguntas
that should be
en la
really
sesión
helpful to have some
abierta.
direct questions and
Creo
answers
que eso
from
nos
her.
va a ayudar
We'll then
para
hear from
hacerle
panelists
preguntas
Veronica
directas.
Aguilar and
Luego
Africa Nairobi
escucharemos a los
Ramirez
panelistas
Lopez, who will share
Verónica
their
Aguilar
personal
y África
stories
Nairobi
with you related
Ramírez
to the
López,
topics of this event. And that should be very
y
exciting
ellas
and powerful.
compartirán sus
Then
historias.
that will be followed by a Q&A
Eso
with the
será
panelists
seguido por una
where we
sesión
will
de
ask
preguntas y
specific questions
respuestas moderada,
to the
donde
panelists
le
that they
haremos
actually have been
preguntas a los
given
panelistas
pre-planned, but then we'll have an open Q&A
y
that will
después
follow
tendremos
that
una
are
sesión
open-ended
abierta
questions from
para
the attendees
preguntas
from
y
this event.
respuestas de
And
todos
Betsy
los
Rodriguez-Roof
participantes.
will be reading those
Después Aquila
questions. And she'll
Herdrich,
also, by the way, be
ella va a
tracking the time
leer
during this event and
las
sending chat
preguntas y
messages
va
to
a
folks
llevar
if
el
the time
control
is
del
going
tiempo.
over or if we need to make an adjustment.
En
So
caso
watch
de que
out,
nos
keep your
toque
chat
hacer
open if
algún
you're
ajuste.
in any case, so you
En
kind
cualquier
of
caso,
can be clued into her help that way. Next, we'll get an update
a
on the city's
continuación
recent housing
recibiremos una
efforts, which
actualización
will
sobre
come from
los
Aquila
recientes
Herdravich, our Tualatin
esfuerzos
Community
de
Development
vivienda de la
Director.
ciudad.
And finally, we're going to wrap
Y
up with
finalmente,
two short segments. One is from
vamos a
Catherine
tener
Gallion
dos
from Community
segmentos
Action, who
finales,
will share an
uno
array
de
of available
Catherine Gallion de
resources in a
Community
very short
Action,
time that
y
may
nos
help
habrá
those
sobre una
experiencing severe
variedad de
rent burden.
recursos disponibles.
And then the final wrap up is to provide a segment called Feedback to Action, which will be about what can you do next? How can you stay involved? What's going to happen next? Those types of things. And Garrett will give that final closing segment. So with that, let's move on right into our program.
Pasemos directamente a nuestro programa.
Actually, I just want to thank everybody who is here participating, in particular, who came to this event. This is a hard time to get to an event, and we recognize that. And we're so appreciative of you, as well as the panelists, the speakers, and city staff. Thank you all so much just for being here. That's an accomplishment. The next segment is some polling, and Garrett's going to pull up. We want to find out a little bit about who's actually here and what matters to you. If you wouldn't mind, this would be for all attendees. And Garrett, is this for the panelists too, or just attendees?
Just attendees. We have 24 attendees tonight.
Okay, great. Okay, so for the attendees, please just go right ahead and fill out. They're pretty simple yes, no, or multiple choice type questions. If you could take a few moments here to fill that out, we'll kind of get a sense of the attendees and who you all are.
La número dos es usted o su familia.
And Karen, I'll monitor and let you know how many people have completed. We're about 40 seconds in. We have no full completions yet, but let's see who can win the grand prize.
La entrada o estancia en una vivienda económica en Tualatin. La cuarta es una vivienda de calidad, segura y estable. ¿Juegan un papel clave en mi salud personal y la de mi familia? La número 5. ¿Qué lo trajo aquí hoy? La número 6. ¿Qué ciudad es la mejor?
We've got about half the attendees completed, Karen, so let's maybe give it just another minute, and then I think I'll be able to end it.
La mayoría de los participantes ya han completado la encuesta, entonces les vamos a dar unos minutos más a los que faltan.
Right now, Tualatin is leading Wakanda for the favorite city, so we'll see if that holds here as we get the last few responses.
Where is Wakanda?
¿En dónde queda Wakanda?
It's a magical place, Karen.
Es un lugar mágico, Karen.
All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. We have 25 people who've completed it. So I'm just going to hold on just for another second. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling there. And then I will share the results with the group.
Y voy a compartir ahora los resultados
looks
con
like
el grupo.
We have 80% of
Entonces,
attendees from Tualatin.
de los participantes viven en Tualatin.
And we have 40% renters, 60% owners.
Alquilan, 60%
and
son
we have
dueños.
The cost of housing makes it hard to get into or stay in housing that is affordable, with 55% agreeing, 55% strongly agreeing, 40% agreeing, and a few neutrals. Nobody disagreeing outright. For quality, safe, and stable housing, does it play a key role in the personal health of myself and my family? 80% strongly agree, 20% agree, so very high numbers there. What brought you here today? The biggest number here is for affordable housing issues, 55%. And then we have close to that 25% information about the speakers and panels. So thank you, panelists and speakers, for drawing an audience. And a smattering of the other categories, in every category about 10 to 15%. And then what is the best city?
¿Cuál es la mejor ciudad?
Tualatin by 75%, with close second in Wakanda.
Y Wakanda en un segundo.
Thank you all very much.
Gracias a todos por participar.
All right, now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Bandana Shrestha. Her presentation will consider key housing challenges and related health impacts for those severely rent burdened, and we'll look towards solutions for Tualatin. Bandana is the Director of Community Engagement for AARP Oregon.
Ella es la directora de participación comunitaria de Oregon, AARP.
Including growing and supporting the network of age-friendly communities in the state,
incluyendo el apoyo de la red de comunidades amigables con personas mayores en el estado. Aboga por las políticas y programas que mejoren las opciones de vivienda asequibles y accesibles, y expandiendo las opciones de transporte y movilidad para todos. Antes de unirse a AARP, ella desempeñó la dirección de programas modelo de la Fundación Points of Light y desarrolló y dirigió programas para involucrar y servir a diversas poblaciones desatendidas.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's great to be here. Hi, everybody. I love doing stuff in Tualatin, and I see some folks on the participant list. I want to say hi to folks' names I recognize. As Karen said, my name is Bandana Shrestha. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for AARP Oregon, and it's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can do this one thing before I go any further. Hold on.
Antes de que siga.
Yay, did it happen? I think it did.
I think so.
I think I'm sharing it, yes.
Sí, creo
okay,
que
wonderful.
Yep, we can see it.
Compartiendo mi
That's
pantalla.
good. That's always a good start. So for those of you who don't know anything about AARP, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit organization, but we're also based locally. Our state office is right here in the Portland metro area. And we are a membership organization. We're a social change organization. Our work is primarily focused on empowering people to have choices as to how they live as they grow older, as they age. And that includes that means our work is focused on public policy changes, educating and empowering our members and the general public, and community service and volunteerism. And we work at all levels, at the national, state, and local levels. Part of our work is all about livable and age-friendly communities and advancing those principles that allow for people to live in their communities throughout their life course, regardless of their age, their ability, their income, their background, their race, or family size. And of course, in that mix, housing is a critical part of it. And I'm going to show you a couple of slides right here. So at AARP, we use the term age-friendly communities a lot, and we use the age-friendly communities framework to help communities become great places for people of all ages. And the framework you see in front of you has shows that there are 8 domains that make communities livable, and that includes built environment domains like transportation, outdoor spaces, and housing, as well as the more social, economic service environments that contribute to livability, that include things like community supports and health, respect and inclusion, social participation, opportunities for employment. And when you talk about livable communities, any one domain does not exist by itself. If you really want to enhance the quality of life of people, contribute to their health and well-being, you really need to be thinking in a more holistic manner. So today I'm going to be talking mostly about housing and health, but as we discuss, you'll see that things are all connected. And hopefully we'll take away from this discussion some of the interconnectedness of how these things work and how we need to approach solutions. So before we go any further, I want you to just take a second and think about what does home mean for you.
Y háganse esta pregunta, ¿qué
And I'm
significa
not
el
going to
hogar para
ask you
usted?
to answer because, first of all,
No les
you can
voy a
only chat
pedir
with
que lo
me by
pregunten,
chat,
porque solamente
but
me pueden
just
escribir.
give it a minute and give it a second,
Dele un
and
minuto
let's talk
y
about it.
piensen qué significa
Well,
el hogar.
the Merriam-Webster
El
dictionary
diccionario
says
de
a home
Merriam-Webster
is a place
define
where
el
you
hogar
live.
como un
Essentially,
lugar de
it is a
residencia,
place,
el
a
lugar
shelter.
donde vivimos.
But I bet if you are like
Pero
me,
yo
when
apuesto
you
que
think
si
about
ustedes
home, you
son
think
como
about a
yo,
lot more than just a
el
physical
hogar es
structure.
mucho más que una
For me, when
estructura
I think about
física.
home,
Para
I
mí,
think about
cuando yo
home here
pienso en la casa,
I'm an immigrant
yo
here,
soy
but
un
I also think about
inmigrante,
home
pero
is in
también
Nepal, where I
pienso
grew up, where I still
en
have
Nepal,
family. And so
donde
for me,
todavía
family
tengo
belonging is
familia.
a very
Entonces,
strong part of
la
what I
familia, el
think about when I
pertenecer,
think about home.
es muy
Home
importante para mí.
means
Cuando yo pienso
security,
en
it
hogar,
means
eso quiere decir
relationships, it
seguridad,
means a place where you
relaciones,
grow and dream, it means
donde uno
a place where
crece
you
y
meet your
sueña,
neighbors and
donde
create
uno
social
conoce
connectedness. So
sus
in that
vecinos,
sense,
la
home is
conexión
really the
social.
kernel, the building
Entonces,
block
en
of
sí,
livability, both
el
in
hogar
terms of our
es la
communities, but
fundación
also the
de
kind of
nuestras
lives we make. So I
comunidades
like to
y
say
del
home
tipo
is
de
not just a
vidas.
place where you live,
Entonces,
but
el
also where
hogar
you make
no
your
es
life.
solamente un lugar donde
And,
vivimos, sino es el
here's
lugar donde
a set of
hacemos
pictures. I love
nuestras
pictures, as
vidas.
you can tell.
Como ustedes pueden
Shows
ver, les
young
gustan, me gustan
families,
las,
older adults
aquí
living
ven
and
familias
breathing in their
jóvenes.
homes. So it's I want to set that stage before we
Entonces,
talk
esa
more
es la
about
plataforma
sort of the
sobre
housing
el
part of
hogar.
home, and not to
Antes de
forget
hablar
that
sobre
home is not just
la
about
vivienda,
providing
porque
a physical
el
space,
hogar no
though
es
that is
solamente el
really
proveer
important
un
too,
espacio
because we
físico,
see every day how lack
porque
of
vemos
affordable
todos los
housing
días
and
cómo la
lack of housing
falta de
causes so much trauma
vivienda
and has
asequible
a grave
es un
impact
gran reto
for
y nos
everybody who has to
impacta a
deal with it.
todos que tienen que lidiar con
But
ese aspecto.
anyhow, here is a slide that just has 2 words,
Aquí
housing and
hay
security. So one of the things that we know at AARP, we do a lot of research you know, with people, of people 50 plus, but more recently, our last home and community based survey that was done in 2018 asked questions of not just people 50 plus, but actually surveyed people 18 and over, and it had to do with, you know, what are people's aspirations as to where they want to live, how they want to live, and what that survey showed is that people really want to live and remain in their community as long as possible. And I'm not just talking about people 50 plus, but really people who are 18 to 44, you know, 40, I would say 50 to 60% of adults 18 to 40, 49 say they want to remain in that community. And then, you know, as you grow older, the higher percentage of people say they want to age in place. So we really need to think about how housing is that fundamental element that allows people to age in place, to remain in that communities. But what we really have is a housing security, insecurity crisis, an epidemic in our communities. Every day we see people who have to live on streets, but more than that, housing insecurity shows up in great many different ways. And here in the slide, you see that there's a picture of a chicken coop, and it's I put that there because Aarp, actually, our history, sort of our founding started with when our founder found one of her retired educator colleagues living in a chicken coop in the back of somebody's house, and you know that was 70 years ago. But it doesn't seem like that has changed a great deal for a lot of people. And you know, one of the things that Ethel did was to start AARP and this National Retired Teachers Association, because she found that this person, her colleague who was living in the chicken coop, was suffering from all sorts of other things like access to healthcare, and she saw the need to really advocate for that. So as we think about our home and our health today, you know, that's just a small story to say that this has been around for a long time. So how is it going to be any different for us going forward? I think it starts by really understanding the interconnectedness of issues and focusing on some of the key issues that hopefully help us navigate and find solutions as we try to think about better outcomes for people of all ages in our community. So I want to focus on three areas. The first one is housing affordability and costs and how that impacts health. And the second one is quality and design of housing and how that impacts health. And lastly, location and neighborhoods and how that impacts health. So housing affordability, obviously housing insecurity has to do with lack of affordable housing in our communities. We are talking about rent burden, and I'm not going to dwell on that a lot because some of the other speakers, even in introduction, talked about what housing cost burden means, that you're paying more than 30%, or if you're really severely rent burden, you're paying more than, or housing cost burden, you're paying more than 50% of your income on housing. And essentially, when you are paying that much on housing, it leaves very little you know, money to do the other things in life that is necessary, like buying food, or paying for medication, or paying for transportation if you need to go somewhere. And one of the things that is noteworthy for Oregon is that the percentage of Oregonians who are housing cost burden has been rising steadily since 2000. And between 2007 and 10, there was a 16% jump. And that's just 3 years. And that hasn't continued to peter out in any sort of way, as you know. This slide is from the National Low Income Housing Coalition and shows you that we have a deficit about almost 100,000 rent homes, deficit for those people who are considered extremely low income. And extremely low income are people who make, or households that make only $25,000 for a 4-person household. And you know, of the people, households that are rent burdened, 22% are lower income. It looks like I have only 2 minutes, so I'm going to run through the rest of this really quickly, which is terrible timing on my part for dealing with my stuff here. So I think somebody else mentioned that people who are people of color, older adults are often the people who are most rent burdened because for older adults, for instance, are living on fixed incomes. And similarly, even though there's been a great resurgence since the 2008 economic recession, people of color have not benefited from that. Some of these I'm going to skip. So in terms of quality of housing and design, there are a couple of things. Like if you are dealing with cost of housing and are rent burdened, you're also going to be making some compromises as to the kind of housing that you will end up living in. Maybe you will, go for a house that has mold problems or it doesn't have enough insulation. And if you're somebody who has a disability, you may end up having to live in a house that is not very accessible. And that means that there may be falls. And falls happens to be one of the highest reasons for fatalities for older adults, and a lot of those falls happen at home because you're living in substandard homes or homes that don't meet your needs. And in COVID situation points to the fact that we have it really exemplifies some of the disparities that our communities are currently experiencing. The highest rate of deaths from COVID have been people of color, and researchers have been talking about why is that, and part of that has to do with the crowded living situation that a lot of communities, families of color are ending up living in, and that has to do with lower income, that has to do with long-standing disparities that come from racial segregation and the type of housing that communities of color were living in. And I also want to mention the fires that just recently took place. This picture that you see in front of you, those two pictures, is from Talent in Phoenix, where about 9 manufactured trailer parks were destroyed in the fire. And a lot of the residents in those parks were Latino community members, our neighbors, older adults, people living on fixed income. The issue is here, going back to the issue of housing quality and design, is that, not to say that manufactured housing necessarily are prone to fires, but that these parks had a lot of older homes that were built at a time in the 70s before HUD instituted certain measures to make them mobile homes more fire resistant. So, lower income families are making choices that put them at risk, health risk, and losing not only their home, but potentially their lives. So the last point that I want to focus on is related to housing, is the housing location and neighborhood design. And here's somebody who's standing at a bus stop. It is barely just a pole, obviously waiting for a bus. The location of your home really has a lot to do with how well you do in life, whether you have access to transportation. Is there transit? Is it a walkable place? And also, is it a place where you are close to good schools? There is a great tool put out by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I encourage you to go and take a look at it. This particularly compares 2 addresses. One is the Tualatin. I think is that the library or the senior center now? I can't forget. I think that was the library, but I'm not sure. It might have been the senior center. The 2 senior centers in 2 communities, and very close communities. One's in Tigard, one's in Tualatin. You see that there's a 5-year longevity difference, life expectancy difference. So that goes to, like if you're living in these 2 very neighboring communities, but there are really different outcomes. Why is that? Some of it has to do with housing and whether or not people have, we have housing in places that help people thrive. And those things that help people thrive are what I talked about previously about the age-friendly communities. Are there all those things available? You can't just put a house somewhere and say, oh yeah, it's an affordable house, and then it's not a house that's going to support you and give you a place to really make a life. And here's a picture of a child. A lot of times families are making choices and they may move and go and to a place where there are more options for better schools, but but then they
no
may
pueden
be
tomar
losing out
la
on
decisión de
other
vivir en
things
un
like
lugar que tenga mejores
making,
escuelas
choices
debido a
and not
los
having enough
costos.
food at home because they're
Entonces tienen que
living in a
decidir
place where they're paying
o
more.
pago
So I know
un
that I've
alquiler
run out
más
of time,
alto
so I'm
o
gonna just show you this one slide, which I
compro comida para
love
mis
the
hijos.
animation saying that
Esta última
our home is the
transparencia.
linchpin for
Entonces la
our well-being,
vivienda
both our
es
financial,
la
physical,
clave
mental,
o el clavo que
as well as our social
mantiene
connectivity. And
la rueda conectada
even
al
though we
eje.
talk about different
Aunque
generations,
hemos
at least in
hablado
ARP,
de
we talk about
diferentes
starting with
generaciones
people 50 plus.
en
The truth is,
ARP
when we
con
talk about
personas de más
homes,
de
housing,
50
when we talk about
años
affordability, we have
y
more
la
shared interests than
asequibilidad.
not. And it has to
Entonces
do
tenemos
with
muchas
the
cosas
kind of community we
compartidas
envision,
que
where we can
necesitamos
all
y
thrive, where we have
compartimos
access
a
to
pesar de la
transportation, we
edad
have
que
varied types of
tenemos.
housing, we have open
La
spaces and parks
asequibilidad
that
de las
all together
viviendas,
contribute to our
transporte,
well-being and our health.
seguridad,
Thank you so much. I'm
caminas con
sorry I took a little bit
banquetas.
of time
Gracias
longer,
y
Karen.
perdón que me
I'm
demoré
done with
mucho
this
en
now.
esta presentación.
Thank you so much, Bandana. That was such a rich and important
Gracias,
and
Bandana,
timely
y gracias
presentation
por tu
for our times.
presentación.
I think it's
Para
all given
nuestro
us a little
tiempo.
bit to think about.
Esto
And
nos ha
I'd like
dado
the
mucho para
attendees and
pensar.
actually all who are
Me
on here
gustaría a
to just
todos
take a
los que
moment to
están
just
aquí
pause
que
for a
tomen
moment.
un
I'm just
momento
going to give you a moment here and think about what you
y
heard.
piensen de lo que hemos escuchado.
And when people are ready, if you choose,
Cuando
you
la
can
gente
enter any
está
questions you
lista,
might have to
ustedes
Bandana
pueden
in the Q&A.
comenzar a escribir sus preguntas en la sección de texto.
Okay, so you may continue to put questions as they come to you in the Q&A, but we are going to start our moderated panel now in the essence of time. And two of our panelists we're going to start with who are going to be doing personal story sharing. That is Veronica and Africa. They'll each briefly introduce themselves and then each will share their personal stories and experiences related to severe housing rent burden. And then Bandana will, after we finish the storytelling component, Bandana will join them for a Q&A that will follow. So Veronica, welcome.
Entonces, Verónica, bienvenida.
And please go ahead and introduce yourself. Come on the screen with a video. And then start us off with sharing your story.
Contándonos tu historia.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Veronica Aguilar. I identify myself as a Black Latina, married, mother of three. I am a 26-year resident of the Tualatin Tigard area. I am an educator employed by this great district of Tigard Tualatin.
Trabajo en el distrito de Tigard Tualatin.
As a lot of people know, I am a very active community member, part of the Tualatin Diversity Task Force. And being that position that I have in the city, I want to take advantage of it and actually feel that it's an obligation here tonight to advocate for my people of color, or our people of color, in our city of Tualatin, utilizing my past experiences and an equity lens, and with the permission of all of you, give you the various personal experiences that I've had as a member of this community and from the voices of the community. And I thank you once again for allowing me to have this space here tonight to share everything that I have with all of you.
Thank you very much, Veronica.
Gracias, Verónica.
Africa, please introduce yourself and share your story.
Y cuéntanos tu historia.
Hi, my name is Africa Nairobi Ramirez Lopez.
Hola, me llamo
I love
Africa,
the city of Tualatin and have been a resident here for over 25 years. I have worked in this school district in various different roles for over 18 years, and I also have worked as a medical interpreter for 14 years, as well as other jobs serving and supporting the community. In the last few years, it has become necessary for me to work at 3 different jobs in order for my family to continue living within the Tualatin city limits. I felt this was important to keep my family connected to the community and the excellent school district we have found here. In order for me and my family to live in the city of Tualatin, it has required me to have multiple jobs. I needed to supplement my primary job with other employment, since the cost of living far exceeded my income. Not only was it difficult to overcome the cultural barriers of being a Latina woman, I also had added responsibility to maintain a home as a single parent. These were not easy things to do, but I kept working, looking for opportunities and mentors until I could proudly say that I was able to provide for my 3 children, each one now a college student who went through the Tiger Tualatin School District and graduated from Tualatin High School. Unfortunately, despite all that I have accomplished in this city, I too face what many other families face: increasing rent and the general high cost of living here in Tualatin, and forcing me out of this place, which has been my home and my community for so many years. I don't want to leave behind my family and friends, whom I lean on for support, but I can see no other choice. I know I'm not the only one going through this, because I hear the same concerns from others in my community. Families are forced to move out of Tualatin due to the high rent increases and a lack of well-paying jobs in the area, forcing many to take on multiple jobs just to be able to afford the cost of living here. Children are paying the consequences of not being able to live in the community they grew up in by moving to another school, and most of the time by moving to another district or even another state. Families lose out when they cannot even be home with their children because of their many jobs.
A veces los padres no pueden estar con sus hijos por la cantidad de trabajos que ellos tienen que trabajar.
And thank you for having me here, giving me the opportunity to express and say my story.
Y contarles mi historia.
Thank you so much, Africa. Both of your stories, Veronica and Africa, are extremely profound and moving, and both have required an enormous amount of courage, I know, for each of you to share them openly in public like this. We are deeply appreciative that you took the chance on us to do that. Now let's transition to a 3-way panel. Bandana will join Veronica and Africa, and we have some key questions that the panelists have been given ahead of time. And we'll start with that. It's really a 2-part Q&A that we're doing. The first part is these kind of pre-planned questions, and the second part is open-ended. So, Veronica, I'll start back with you. That's okay. The first question is, what barriers or impediments are there that you see to reducing severe housing rent burden?
I want to give you some background knowledge of where I get credibility in saying everything that I'm about to say. Being vulnerable, I'm going to admit that I am an employee of the district, and I am very strongly advocating always for the good of others. I actually took the time in this past summer to be a first-hand experience where the summer program, feeding program, had stopped when the school year stopped mid-June. I advocated not as an employee, but as a community member, and I noticed that the need continued, especially in the middle of this pandemic. I advocated, I did influence and take some of the influences I had in the district and advocated with others to try to strive to get food, which is just a basic need to our community, and I mean our city metropolitan. I was out on my own vehicle. I advocated and I got food from various places within the city, and then from local businesses that donated pastries,
de negocios que
hot
donaron
meals to me to
pastelitos,
go out into the city of Tualatin and
comidas
some of these
calientes
apartment complexes that
para llevarlas
a
a
lot of
estos
us live in, and
complejos de
just give
apartamentos
out
donde
food.
muchos vivimos y
Because I
distribuirla.
advocated later on, the school district
Debido a
was
que
very
abogué, por eso el
cooperative and
distrito
very
escolar cooperó
understanding and
y
providing lunches,
entendió
sack
la
lunches, and
necesidad de
continuing the
proveer
summer program
los
into the
almuerzos y
summer in the
seguir
middle of the
el
pandemic, and
programa
which is
de
something
almuerzos
they
durante el
had done in the
verano y
past,
la
but it had not
pandemia,
done
algo que
more
habían
local
hecho,
on premises
pero no
in
lo
these
habían
apartment
hecho
complexes.
en estos
And
complejos
I
de
volunteered my
apartamentos.
time
Yo
out of my own time, instead of taking the summer off as an
como
educator
voluntaria,
and
en
not
vez
working,
de
I worked
tomar el verano
using my own vehicle and
y
recruited
usando mi propio vehículo,
others in the community in these
recluté a
apartment
otros en la
complexes to help me
comunidad
give out
de estos
sack lunches.
complejos de
The reason
apartamentos
why I
para
explain all
distribuir
this
los
to you is
sándwiches.
because
La razón por la
me
cual les explico
being
todo esto
into these apartment
es
complexes,
porque
being
al
on these
ir
premises
a
allowed me
estos
to have
lugares,
a
a estos
very
complejos, me
raw,
dio una
heartfelt
experiencia
communication face to face with a lot of our residents.
cara a cara,
And
ni de corazón a
I got very
corazón,
emotional to see
y fue
the
algo muy
sadly
emocionante y muy
poor,
triste de
high
ver la
crime,
pobreza, el
low
delito,
income,
los delitos
high
que
rent
hay, los
apartment
ingresos
complexes that
bajos,
a lot of my own families that I
alquileres
have
altos,
as an
las
educator have
familias a quienes
known for
sirvo,
years,
a quienes he
and
conocido por
seeing
muchos
their
años,
living
y ver las condiciones en
arrangements
que viven
affecting them not only with their health,
y la forma en
not
que
having
no solamente los
the option
afecta
to
en
move out
cuanto a
of
la
these
salud,
apartment
pero
complexes,
no tienen la opción
having
de
to deal with
salirse de estos complejos de
very poor
apartamentos
windows that brought in mold in some of these
en
buildings,
lugares había
having to see children living
no habían buenas ventanas,
with
ver a niños viviendo
the fear of not
con
having
el
a meal
temor
on their
de no
table because
tener
their parents had
una
to
comida
decide
porque sus
whether they
padres
should be
tenían que
paying
decidir
the rent
si
or
pagar
should
el
they be
alquiler
providing a meal for
o
their children.
si deberían comprar la
And
comida
to
para
me,
brindarle
and any
a los
human being,
niños.
that is a
Y
very
para
tough
mí,
decision as a
esa es
parent
una decisión
and to
muy
make.
difícil
If you
para que
provide
un
a roof
padre
over your
tenga que
head
poner.
for your
O le
child,
doy comida a
your
mis
family,
hijos
or do
o
you
le pongo
provide
un techo
food?
a los niños.
And being able to
Entonces,
be out there, I was
al
able to
estar
also see
en
how a
la
lot of these
comunidad
families,
también
because
pude
of the
ver,
circumstances and the barriers
debido a esas
of being undocumented,
circunstancias y las
the lack of
barreras de no
English to
tener
advocate for
documentos,
themselves, or
la
even,
carencia del idioma
and I'm not
inglés,
speaking about just our Latinx
y
communities,
no
I'm speaking about
solamente la
all communities of
comunidad
color. I'm talking
latina,
about Pacific
sino
Islanders, African
los del
American
Pacífico, los
communities
afroamericanos,
also, and even our white families,
y
that
también familias
they're put in this
blancas
decision making in the middle of a
que
pandemic,
quedan en medio de una
having to,
pandemia,
based on
de
only one
tomar la
income in the household
tener que
sometimes,
vivir
parents
en
losing their
una
jobs,
familia con
not
un
having
solo
affordable
ingreso,
housing
al no
to
tener
go to,
vivienda
and still
asequible a
fight
donde ir
for being able to stay in the city so they
y
can have a
tener que
higher and
seguir
more
luchando
better
para poder
education
quedarse
than they
en la
had
ciudad para
as children,
poderle
and
brindar a
providing
sus
that for
hijos
their
una
children.
mejor educación que la que ellos
It's
tuvieron.
just it's something that
Es algo que
I invite you all
yo
to
los
do
invito a todos a
sometime,
hacer
and
en
even
algún momento.
city officials,
Los
politicians,
oficiales de
and
la
even those
ciudad,
of
a
you
los
that are employed in
políticos
Tualatin,
y aquellos
to
de
go out into the
ustedes que
community
trabajan en la ciudad,
firsthand
vayan a
and
la
listen to the
comunidad
stories.
y
Pull up a
escuchen las
chair, even far
historias.
away, 6 feet during this COVID pandemic,
Durante la pandemia
and
mantengan ese
listen,
distanciamiento
and you'll
social y
hear
escuchen.
what I heard. And
Y ustedes
it's impossible
escucharán
not
lo que
to
yo
take advantage of
escuché.
spaces like this and
Y
actually
por
advocate
eso
for others
es importante
when you
tomar
know
estos
that
espacios como el de
they
aquí
can't.
de hoy para poder abogar
And
por ellos que no
I just
pueden
want to
abogar
end
por
by
sí
saying that
mismos. Y quiero terminar
coming, and I'm going to be
diciendo,
vulnerable in saying that I'm
y voy
coming
a ser
from a
vulnerable, que yo
single
vengo
household.
de
I
una
was for some
posición,
time a single parent,
durante
and I went
mucho
through the
tiempo
same
yo
thing.
fui
I had
una
to
madre
decide at
soltera
times I
y
didn't have
tuve
the
que
appropriate
decidir,
income
o
to pay
porque no
my rent.
tenía un
I
ingreso
had to
adecuado,
swallow my pride
tenía
and look for what's
que
best for my
tragarme el
child, and I
orgullo y
had to
tenía que
advocate.
decidir
And so I hope that you listen to what everyone is saying here tonight and keep in mind the stories of those in our community.
Estas son las historias de la gente en nuestra comunidad.
Thank you very much, Veronica.
Muchas gracias, Verónica.
So I'm going to ask the same question to the two other panelists.
Entonces, le voy a preguntar
Africa,
la misma pregunta
what barriers or impediments are there that you see to reducing severe housing rent burden?
El acceso a vivienda
This is a really hard
asequible.
question, but what I think is some barriers or impediments are the lack of high-paying jobs in the area, funding to help with rental assistance, especially now with COVID, equity, laws to support affordable housing, availability of affordable homes. Without programs to help with funding affordable housing programs, our community cannot help individuals who need this kind of benefits. So those are my thoughts. I know that the city of Tualatin will touch more on this, and I don't think there is like a right answer, but that's just what I have to put in.
Thank you, Africa. Very much appreciated.
Gracias, África. Aprecio mucho esto.
Bandana, the same question to you. What barriers or impediments are there that you see to reducing severe housing rent burden?
I think what both Veronica and Africa have pointed to, both kind of things that we can address through policy, but also personal experiences that sometimes individuals and families are facing, like not being able to advocate for themselves, those kind of things, and having to struggle between making these very difficult decisions, but also things like just not having enough the right type of affordable housing in the community, not having assistance, rental assistance. I think for Tualatin, just thinking about the more suburban context, I think the high cost of transportation may be an issue. How are people getting around? How it's not just housing. You have to figure in that the transportation costs, and if you have to travel distances, if it's not very walkable, that might be some of the other things just in terms of a challenge for thinking about rent burden, because the rent or your housing cost is not just that by itself. It's sort of other things kind of add up to that too. And I think like what sort of housing are we allowing to be built in
el tipo de vivienda que estamos
any community? This is a conversation that I've seen take place a lot in Portland. What sort of housing is being built? Is it really meeting the needs of people who live there? And I don't know if I can point to the barriers necessarily, but that's something potentially to look at in terms of finding solutions for being able to offer more opportunities for
encontrar más oportunidades para reducir esta carga del alquiler.
Okay, so we have a second question.
Entonces tenemos una segunda pregunta. Verónica, ¿todavía estás ahí?
Okay, second question. We'll do the same round.
Vamos a hacerla de la misma manera.
What solutions
¿Qué
do you suggest,
soluciones
Veronica, to reduce severe housing
para
rent
reducir
burden
la
in
severa
Tualatin?
carga del alquiler de viviendas?
We went from barriers, now we're on solutions.
Entonces ahora hablamos de barreras, ahora soluciones.
To give. From what solutions that I've heard directly from the community is, like I mentioned, a lot of our people of color are unfortunately undocumented in this country. So you can have organizations which I even myself, I'm not shy to say, I'm vulnerable in saying that as a single parent, I had to refer to assist me in paying my rent. Unfortunately, because of a lot of the immigration status of a lot of our residents here in the city of Tualatin, they don't qualify. Or what could happen as some residents, either they don't qualify for because they're undocumented, and so making it programs where there's flexibility of being eligible, being more flexible because of their undocumentation, and also that middle class that they don't make too much, they make too much or they make too little. and that are in the same, there's a lot of seasonal jobs out there that people are having to take and having to take the jobs, and you don't qualify, or you don't qualify for food stamps, but then you don't qualify for assistance either. So, and you still cannot make ends meet. So I believe that it's necessary that we have to make more ability in those programs. Also, most importantly, have the cost of living taken in mind, and when it comes to the rent costs. And that I'm going to say that I kind of mentioned is that not only go out into the community, invite those people of color and the right people at the table, stakeholders, like I'm privileged to do tonight, and to have a lending ear of firsthand ideas from them themselves, and also programs that will help assist families with maintenance and how to advocate for themselves without having fear of reporting and being having reprimand for reporting inadequate living arrangements or living because of maintenance.
Thank you. Okay, Africa. What solutions do you suggest to reduce severe housing rent burden in Tualatin?
Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure about solutions, but I know it impacts my family and me as well as many other families. I do believe that establishing rental assistance programs, not just on the national level, but locally in Tualatin, can help to ease the financial burden, support new development of affordable housing units or within existing units. Local supportive services can provide assistance to families in identifying ways to stabilize their social, emotional, and economical situation, and to how to thrive in these challenging times. Support groups can also be established, which can share resources that can help with financial assistance and other problems associated with how to live in the community with ever-increasing costs. And perhaps there could be some form of legislation which could encourage rent control to keep costs down and maintain diversity in the community. When we eliminate those who are priced out of a neighborhood, we eliminate their diversity, which makes us a more vibrant community. Those are my thoughts.
Situaciones financieras.
For not having so many, you had some great ones in there. Really good. Thank you.
En la comunidad. Por no tener ninguna, dijiste mucho y muchas
what solution do you suggest?
She's listed all of them, I would say, almost all of them. They were great. I think we should think about both policy and programmatic solutions. One thing I didn't hear mentioned is shared housing, and that's something that I think about, being that I'm with AARP, and a lot of times older adults, traditionally have been homeowners. But as they grow older, they're very house rich, but they might be cash poor and can't really afford it. So shared housing is a great option. So, is there a way for the city to promote shared housing or to support shared housing? That's one. And I just saw an article today in the Next City newsletter talking about how in one of the cities that, the loosening of regulations in Austin to allow for more affordable housing. So what is the city doing? I think the city staff will know this much better in terms of really promoting affordable housing, and not just subsidized housing, but also, like Veronica mentioned, there are people who don't qualify. Even if they qualify, they don't qualify because they make $1 more for market, for subsidized housing. So how can you make sure that the market-based housing that is, in Tualatin can be more accessible and not affordable with the big A, but affordable for people who maybe cannot get subsidized housing? How are you doing that? So I know that AARP, we have been very involved with some of those policies at the state level, like House Bill 2001, which is all about promoting various types of housing, different sizes of housing. I would love to see Tualatin really become an age-friendly community, take, and say, yes, we commit to livability, and also say we will incentivize or mandate more accessible housing, because that's another thing, is that we need very types of housing at every
brindar
income
vivienda
level,
asequible
and especially for lower
y
income
variedad
families, if you have a
de
disability or even if it's
vivienda,
a temporary
especialmente
disability, sometimes,
para
it
la
becomes such a
gente
burden.
con
So
ingresos bajos o las
those are some of
personas
my
con
thoughts, and I think there are
discapacidades.
some great examples
Creo que hay
of
unos
rental
grandes
housing assistance.
ejemplos.
Portland has one
Portland
that
tiene
North
un
is
gran
projected,
programa,
which I think
el
might be interesting to
proyecto
look at as
del
well. So I'll keep my mouth
noroeste.
quiet.
Great, thank you. So thank you, first of all of you had
Entonces,
an enormous
gracias a
amount of
todos.
great ideas and
Todas
wisdom
tenían unas
in
grandes
what you
ideas
offered.
en todo lo
And
que
we
nos
are a little
ofrecieron.
bit ahead of schedule. So
Y
what I
estamos un
wanted
poquito
to know is, now that you've
adelantadas
heard each other throw out ideas, you know,
del horario, y ahora que
what
se han
bubbled to the top for
escuchado
you of the spectrum of
la
not only
una a
what
la
you
otra,
individually said, but what you heard as from
de
each
lo
other
que
as a group?
escucharon de la una de la otra,
Was
¿qué
there a
les
theme?
resaltó?
Was there
¿Hubo
some
un
new
tema?
idea that just
¿Hubo
you hadn't
alguna
heard
idea
before
nueva
that
que no habían
felt really
escuchado
good? You know,
antes que suena muy bien?
collectively, what do you think? Where should we go? Where should
Entonces, ¿qué
Tualatin? What should our
piensan?
next move be?
¿Cuál debe ser nuestro
well, one thing,
siguiente
if I may,
paso?
take a start on this.
Una de las cosas, si yo puedo,
Bandana, you said you're with AARP,
Bandana, tú
and I'd like to
dices que
offer,
estás
and I'm
con
going to put the city also
AARP,
into this set
y
that I
entonces
forgot to
voy a
mention.
también
The
dirigir a
eviction
la
memorandum
ciudad
that has been
el
extended by the governor,
moratorio
which you don't believe
del
how
desahucio.
joyful and it made a lot of parents and a lot of families to say, you know,
Ese
I still have more
moratorio
time.
alivió a muchas
I'd like
familias.
to not put you on the spot, of course, and all means, but I'd like to see or like to offer maybe an idea of assisting those families.
Pero
there's a lot of and I say us, you know, I can include myself or thankfully not, but others that I know around me that are just nervous like this. They're advised, you know, oh my gosh, now it's not September, now it's December where the governor has extended this. But they will, time is still not a solution to the issue. And there still will be balances to be paid for rent. And you know, and I know I've seen the templates of the letters that's been offered in more than one language for families to fill out, you know, to keep that communication with managers and property owners. I'm just wondering, is there a development maybe in plan or some way of other programs that we can help those families, like a second option? Okay, I got the time, now who's going to help me minimize that balance, not add on more to the balance in coming December?
Antes de que llegue diciembre.
It's a great, I think that's a great question. I know I was also very glad to see that ARP supported the eviction moratorium, and we were supportive of the tenant protection bill. So I think that's another thing, by the way, I would just mention is that I don't know if Tualatin has it, but some local jurisdictions have you know, taken up local tenant protection bills, relocation fees, those kind of things. Sometimes those are tough to get support on, but those are options. There are a lot of different types of options. Some are short-term, like thinking about rental assistance or really working to find options for families so that they are not, you know, come December, big ballooning, right? Think that they have to pay back. But also, I think, you know, more longer-term solutions too. I think it's going to be a fine balance. And I was really moved by both of what you shared, Veronica and Africa. I really appreciate that being candid. And, you know, I work for AARP. The truth is that, you know, AARP, I mean, being older, 50+ members are not a monolith. They're very diverse. And our policies are geared towards really helping in the broadest way so that people who are doing well can stay doing well, and people who are needing help get the help that they need, right? And in housing, you know, like I said, I really love that slide I showed. I always show it about the shared interests we have, you know, and I think part of that is about how do we figure out the most immediate needs that we need to address, like, you know, like what's happening in terms of the crisis now of helping families, but also those longer-term solutions, which I think Africa laid out really well. I have to say, those were really good, so. I'm going to shut up. Otherwise, I will keep going on talking. That's a terrible habit.
Ese es un hábito muy malo.
How about you, Africa?
We have a few more minutes before we go on to the open Q&A. Any other thoughts? Anything you forgot to say?
Algo que se te olvidó decir?
Well, I jumped through a lot, you know. I was going to talk about some of how economic instability, housing instability contributes to not just like if kids who are growing up in crowded housing or experiencing housing instability have long-term impact. So, you know, if you want to think about the future, we really do have to tackle it now and, you know, think of a kind of an integrated way of approaching that.
Buscar una forma integrada.
What about you, Africa? I want to hear what you have to say rather than going on.
Decir?
You can keep going. You're giving great information.
Estás dando muy buena información.
I saw a couple of questions on the from the Q&A, so I'll wait for that.
Un par de preguntas pero voy a esperar.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we maybe should move on to the Q&A and more will bubble up. I'm sure people will tag on to some of the very wise things that you've said and the insights that you've all given, which I am deeply appreciative for. I know the team that worked so hard to put this event together is so happy that you both agreed to tell your stories and to participate. And Bandana, you're just an added bonus, so we're very grateful to all of you. So with that, we're going to move into the open Q&A, and that includes all attendees. And Garrett, if you're still there, does that include panelists also, or is it just attendees that get to, I know panelists are responding, but can panelists or city staff also ask questions, or should it just be attendees asking the questions?
Los participantes.
Yeah, it should just be attendees asking questions.
Okay. Attendees, you're on now to ask questions in the Q&A box. Once those start going, I think that Betsy and Aquila are sort of sorting them, and we'll pull some to the top, and Betsy will read those questions and direct to a panelist. So we have a few minutes here just to get the questions going.
Hello. I'm your friendly Q&A, and I'm going to help field some questions that we already have. So thank you so much for people that have submitted your questions. It looks like we have one from David Carr, who has a question. I think this should be for Bandana. Factors that have lowered life expectancy in Tualatin.
La expectativa de longevidad.
Thank you so much for that question. And I have to say, and the second question looks like it's the same kind of question about why do people have lower life expectancy. And I just picked those two addresses just to demonstrate that, you know, even within a short space, there are people may have shorter life expectancy. It's not an exact science. I love the Robert Johnson Foundation. They're doing amazing work and highlighting stuff, but I don't have a specific answer as to why Tualatin, you know, versus the address in Tiger. But generally, what the foundation, Robert Johnson Foundation, says is that I'm going to read it. It says, affordable, high-quality healthcare is essential to our health, but where we live can have a greater impact. Improving health and longevity in communities starts with ensuring access to healthy food, good schools, affordable housing, and jobs that provide us the resources necessary to care for ourselves and our families. In essence, the types of conditions that help us keep from getting sick in the first place. So obviously, you know, healthcare or health is not about acute care only. You know, it's about all the things that surround us. That's why I love the age-friendly and the news model. So I think we need to kind of think about what are the differences if we're going to compare different parts of our metro area.
A comparar diferentes áreas de nuestras zonas de alquiler.
Thank you. Thank you, Bandana. And it looks like we have a question from Jacqueline Castillo.
Jacqueline Castillo.
Jackie, can you speak? I don't think so. Okay. So it says, how is this research percentages handled? Meaning how or what is the
¿Cómo se manejan
estos
porcentajes?
Yeah, I think that came in after Bandana. So Bandana, would you have an answer to this one?
I generally, I'm going to assume, because I'm not exactly sure, but I think the question is, these percentages are high for maybe rent burden, and what can we do to solve it? And we addressed some of it already. I think the issue of, two issues, right? One is we need more housing that's affordable. How do we get there? And the other one is, can we help people who need more income or whatever, so that they have they can afford to live continue to live in Tualatin. And in terms of housing solutions, I think we talked about some of them just now, from looking at incentivizing certain types of housing, building more affordable housing, doing rental assistance, tenant protections, all those kind of things are things that will help. And in terms of helping people find more income, it's not just only income, it's also the surrounding other costs. So I think like we also need to think about, the nexus of transportation and housing. And I just saw another article that was really interesting to me, because it said instead of looking at housing cost burden as just housing, they flipped it and looked at burden for housing after people have, like, let's say somebody gets $100 and they're spending $30 for housing, and we say, oh, their cost burden. Instead, they looked at what is the other requirements for that family. Let's say that family needs to spend $70 on or $80 on food and transportation and stuff. And we should, the argument was that we should be looking at the $20 and thinking about housing from that end. Like just thinking outside the box in terms of how we calculate, how we measure cost burden. Because in fact, I think families are even more cost burden, because people are doing away with and making choices because they want to stay in Tualatin or in the place that they've wanted to stay. So they're, making some trade-offs. So I hope that at least touches on some of the answers, the questions.
Thank you for that. All right, so we have a couple more, and we have a couple more minutes as well. So we have two messages coming in. Thank you to Africa and Veronica for being important leaders in our community. That's from Alice Galloway. And what role does Tualatin business have in hiring and training Tualatin residents to have livable wage
¿Cuál es el papel de Tualatin y cómo están educando a la comunidad en cuanto al factor
does Karen or Garrett want to take that one? Or we could always, and we will also be taking all these questions and getting back to everybody with more thorough answers as well.
Vamos a contestarlas de una manera más extensa.
This is Aquila Hurd-Ravich. Hi, I'm the Community Development Director
la
here in
directora
Tualatin.
de Desarrollo Comunitario aquí en Tualatin.
So Alice and it looks like Marissa also answered very similar, or asked very similar questions. And I think that those are very good questions, poignant and tough. Tough to answer. What role do the businesses have in hiring and training Tualatin residents? I'm not sure how to answer that. I think perhaps there's a role that can be filled of connecting residents with jobs in Tualatin. And Marissa makes a good point of how many people in Tualatin commute out of Tualatin. And the number of people who are commuting into Tualatin for some of the higher paying jobs. So there is certainly a disparity between where people work and where they're able to find housing, and if those are in the same location. So I'd like to put some more thought into that. Our economic development manager is not with us tonight. He's not on the call, so I think it would be a good answer or a good question to pose to him. And we can put our heads together and try to try to answer
y
that.
debemos
Alice
unir
and
nuestras
Marissa
cabezas para
both
contestar.
helped us
Alice
last
y
year
Marissa
when we
nos
did an
ayudaron
economic
el año
opportunities
pasado
analysis as
cuando
well as a
hicimos un análisis de oportunidad
housing needs analysis,
en
both very
cuanto
technical
el
documents
análisis
that
de vivienda,
started to kind of look at this question. And
documentos que
so
nos
the
hicieron
city has some
comenzar
policy work
a
to do
mirar la
to see if
respuesta a
there's
esta pregunta
ways to make some connections.
y mirar las formas de hacer esas conexiones.
I think that's a good, if I may add that, I think that as a resident, like
Como
Allison,
residente,
that question that
esa pregunta,
maybe when the city makes decisions
cuando la
on
ciudad toma
what
decisiones
businesses we have
de
and
qué
should we
negocios
allow
tenemos
in the
y
city,
se deben
to take in
permitir
those
en la ciudad,
factors, you know, are they fitting just to a certain community
entonces
members,
están
and is it
encastrando
fitting
en
to
una
all?
comunidad o un
Just
sector
something
de la
question I have.
comunidad o se están
I just
encastrando a
I'm
toda
going to
la
jump in and
comunidad.
say, I think I have heard of some cities for
Creo
city
que he
jobs or
oído
municipal
donde
jobs. They
hay
can put some
trabajos
requirements,
de la
so
ciudad
that's interesting to
donde
think
tiene
about.
ciertos
But a
requisitos,
lot of times incentives are great.
pero
Always
hay
incentives, carrots are
incentivos
always
y
appreciated,
los
especially in
incentivos
dealing in the
son bien
marketplace. So
apreciados
I wonder
en
if there are
diferentes
things that,
lugares.
and this is,
Entonces,
I don't have any
pienso
experience in
si
it, but
hay
something to think about is like,
incentivos
are
que
there
podemos
some
ofrecer
special something that, just like with builders, you can give
como a
incentives
los
for certain,
contratistas.
for builders, for building
Se
affordable
les
housing,
dan
building housing in a certain way.
ciertos
Maybe
incentivos
there's a
para
way to
que
do the same
construyan
for businesses
vivienda
to really create
asequible
that climate of
y
helping
para crear
families.
ese clima para poder o ese medio ambiente para ayudar a las familias.
Thank you, everybody, for your questions. We have one, looks like we have one more question here, which is Betelin Lopez is asking, I'm curious, does the city of Tualatin plan to help solve the problems of rent burdens for families? Or are these kinds of meetings with the city just because they are mandated? So I don't know if the city staff wants to take that one.
¿La ciudad de Tualatin de verdad va a buscar soluciones o son estos foros solamente se hacen por obligación? Para ser transparente con ustedes y honestos con todos ustedes, el Estado ha mandado que tuviéramos esta reunión debido a la cantidad de personas que tienen esta carga de alquiler. Nosotros no lo miramos como un requisito para cumplir, pero para conectarnos con nuestra comunidad y para investigar este tema. Planeamos resolver los problemas. Es una pregunta compleja y la respuesta también es compleja. Nosotros tenemos la esperanza que vamos a poder ayudar con una variedad de vivienda para que sea disponible, una variedad en cuanto a townhomes, condominiums, casas para familias.
A word I heard the other night, which I think is probably more appropriate, attainable. Are these attainable?
Son asequibles, se pueden lograr.
So we are working on it.
Sí estamos
what
trabajando
I'd like
en esto.
to impress upon
Lo
the
que
attendees is that
decirles
we are working on
que estamos
policy.
trabajando
Policy
sobre
then
las
can
políticas,
translate
la
into
reglamentación
development and can
que se
translate into
puede
programs.
traducir
Not
en construcción, en vivienda. No es un proceso rápido, pero estamos comprometidos con el concilio y el alcalde. Estamos comprometidos a buscarle solución a esta
Thank you for
situación.
that answer, Aquila.
Gracias
Looks
por
like
la
we have another
respuesta,
question
Aquila.
from
Tenemos-
Ricardo Palazuelos. Hola, Ricardo.
Ricardo has a question.
His question is, how are TTSD career and technical education funds aligned with the local business
¿Cómo se están alineando
businesses needs?
los ingresos
How do residents perceive such support in
de
order
los
to avoid
negocios y cómo
brain
reciben
drain,
los
exodus of
residentes?
youth post high school graduation? It's a good question.
¿Cómo reciben la ayuda después de haberse graduado de la preparatoria?
It is a good question. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure how, what kind of programs are
No
in
estoy
the
segura, no sé qué tipo de
PTSD. I'm
programas
sorry, I was just
están en
looking
el
for your question to make
PTSD.
sure that I was answering it. I don't see it come up anymore. I'm actually curious if Veronica or Africa may know, based on their connections with
tienen
Tiger 12
alguna
School District,
conexión,
if you have any
si ustedes
insights to
tienen
this question.
Actually, good
una
question. I
respuesta
work
a
with
esa
elementary
pregunta.
students at the
Yo
moment.
trabajo con
I
niños
don't work
en la
with
escuela
high school,
elemental, no
unfortunately.
trabajo con
I
los
only
de
do part my
secundaria.
time. I actually volunteer as president of a nonprofit that has to do with affinity groups,
de una
the state,
empresa sin
with high
fines
school
de
students.
lucro,
So I
con
advise
chicos que
him to, or
terminan
her,
la
him,
prepa.
to actually bring
Entonces
that
les
up to
sugiero traer esa
PTSD
pregunta
staff and board members at the next board meeting, and
la
maybe address that
siguiente
as an
reunión
idea,
de
not only as a
directores
question, but
del
also an
distrito
idea to
escolar.
look into
Y es una
for
idea
courses and actually
para
for
buscar
future
cursos
generations to
y
learn
las generaciones del
and
futuro
to acquire in their curriculum.
para que lo aprendan en
Thank
su
you, Veronica.
currículo.
You reminded me that the city
Gracias,
does have a
Verónica.
program where
El
we
programa
partner with
tiene un programa
the high
donde
schools, and there are job
tenemos
shadow programs that
una
happen in our
asociación
public
con las
works
escuelas de
department. So
secundaria para
kids in high school can
brindarles a los
learn
jóvenes
about
en la preparatoria sobre
water
el mundo
systems,
laboral y aprender sobre
infrastructure,
sistemas
so
de agua,
pipes
infraestructura,
for water, sewer,
tuberías,
streets, and so I
desagües,
think that program, I think our job shadows
alcantarillado.
perhaps were put on
Y ese
hold
tipo
during
de
COVID.
trabajos se pusieron en detente
Hopefully those will pick up again.
durante esta
There is, I think the ones you're
pandemia.
mentioning is the CE2 program. Correct me if I'm wrong, Africa. I don't know.
Creo que
It's
es
C2 program that
un
does have
programa
job
que se
shadows in
llama
there.
C2,
They usually allow
donde los
students to go
jóvenes
out in
pueden
various
hacer
businesses.
sombra
I could be thinking
en
of that one. I could be
diferentes
wrong.
trabajos.
So
No sé,
that allow students to have firsthand
ahí,
experience and
de esa
also be
manera
out in
los
the community.
estudiantes pueden tener una experiencia de primera mano en diferentes
There are
negocios
different
en la
programs,
comunidad.
but I
Sí hay
rather not speak
diferentes
to them
programas,
because I don't know
pero
all of them.
no sé todos los que hay.
Thank you, everybody, for partnering to answer that question.
Gracias
and the city
a todos.
of Tualatin does have a good relationship with the
Y la ciudad de
PTSD, so we will
Tualatin sí
also
tiene
field that question over to them, or
una
that, give
buena
them the feedback
relación
of
con el
anything
distrito
that we are
y
receiving
vamos a enviarles
today.
esa pregunta.
So thank you. It looks like we have time for another question as
Parece que
well.
tenemos una pregunta más.
Says Marissa is saying, will we ever see affordable rents in the long run, or is ownership the long-term solution?
Vamos a ver rentas asequibles a largo tiempo o comprar vivienda es la única verdadera solución.
Will we ever see affordable rents?
Vamos a ver.
I guess I don't know. And is ownership the long-term solution?
Rentas accesibles a la larga.
We have gone through some policy work to identify different
identificado diferente trabajo para lograr alquileres y la compra de vivienda, pero creo que lo que debemos mantener en mente es que hay diferentes caminos para estar en una vivienda. No todos escogen comprar vivienda y mantener opciones de vivienda en alquiler en el contexto de brindar una variedad de vivienda. Con esa imagen, entonces hay un trabajo que debemos hacer ya sea a través de la ciudad o con nuestros asociados o crear medios de alquileres asequibles.
May I make a comment? This is Maria Reyes.
Soy María Reyes.
I don't
Quiero
know
dar
if
un
I can or not,
comentario.
but I just I want to encourage
Quiero
our
animarlos.
community
Quiero animar a
and
nuestra comunidad
to think big and to think
para
of
que
owning
piensen
something. I
en
think it's
grande,
very
que
important that
piensen en
we don't
ser dueños de
always
algo,
depend on these rents
para no siempre
that, like you
depender
said,
de alquileres.
always come. They always, you know, they go up every
Porque el
year.
alquiler incrementa cada
But I
año.
do encourage
Pero
that
sí
we
animo
seek
que nosotros busquemos
to own something and it's ours,
los medios de
and
comprar
no one can
algo
take that
que
away from
sea
us, you know.
de
So I think that's
nosotros,
really
para que nadie
important that
nos lo pueda
we can
quitar.
start thinking that way,
Creo que es
and then we can
algo
pass it
que
on to our family
debemos
members.
pensar y podemos
So
pasárselo a nuestros familiares.
I get that we need to get there when, you know, we need assistance now, and it's a burden for all of us. And trust me, I lived 35 years in the city of Los Angeles renting, so I know what that means.
35 años en Los Ángeles alquilando.
But I always
Entonces,
wanted
yo sé lo que es eso.
to have something that
Pero
belonged to me,
siempre
and I think that's
quería
really important
lograr algo
for
que
us as a
fuera
community.
mío. Y entonces, por eso animo a la comunidad.
As you know, we are we're learning still.
Estamos
And
aprendiendo
so
todavía.
I just want us to think that way.
Quiero
Hopefully,
que
as we work
con
with
esa
the
esperanza
city
que a medida que trabajamos con la
and
ciudad,
developments come up, there will be that attainable home. And I
y se
think that
puede lograr
I can't tell you there's rent's going to go down one day or it's going to go up, because
los alquileres van a
eventually
bajar
the
algún
person who
día,
owns that property
porque
has,
eventualmente la
you
persona
know,
que es el dueño de
we
esa
can put rent
propiedad,
control and all that, but they still
nosotros
own that
podemos
property.
poner controles,
So I
pero
always encourage
ellos son
my
los dueños
community
de
to
esas
think,
propiedades. Entonces yo animo a mis
and if
comunidades,
there's a way that
si hay alguna manera
policy-wise
en
or
que de una
organizations
manera
can help
política que
to
organizaciones
teach
pueden
home ownership, that's really important, I think,
enseñar
for
a ser
us
dueños de
and
vivienda
to create asset as well.
y crear
So there's just
Sorry, Councilor Maria, if I may add to what you're saying, or just make a comment about what you're saying. So that is like my long-time goal that I've had, but you know, paying over $2,000 in rent, and it's just, it's not, there's no way that I can save money to make that down payment to even make that. I mean, that is my long-term goal, and that is my big goal, owning something, and then that way, you know, leaving it to my own children. But it's with the cost of rent, it's just impossible to make that happen. I mean, I just don't see how I will make that, and especially because, you know, I'm at that point where I don't make enough to receive all those you know, assistance or help or anything, but I do not make enough for living. And especially when paying or trying to finish, you know, your career and also having children in college, it is impossible to either fulfill that dream, at least at this moment, with all the rent burden.
And I think that's where, when you mention rent control and all that, I think that's going to help. That's helpful, because it will help at least to not jump that, you know, have that big jump on rent every year, and then have no control of homeowners or people who own property that rent out. You know, we still got to, of course, take, that's one of the steps that we have to do and take care of. But I think that's, Africa, you and I have talked about this, and I really, in fact, when I talk about attaining home, I think of you all the time. When we think of developments that are being built and we work with people that are, you know, when we think of that, developments that are going to be built in Tualatin, I think of you, I think of your family, because I have heard your story, and I think that that's one of the things that we're, as a city, as my position, me personally, Maria, want to see in Tualatin, homes that are attainable for a community. And of course, it's a step, it's a little by little, and it's a process. And if we can maybe work on other things that solutions that you actually talk about, we will hopefully get there someday.
Nosotros algún día ojalá llegaremos
allá.
Yeah, that is my hope. And, I'm here to talk about my personal story, but I'm also here representing our community.
Historia personal,
and if I may give an example, to Representative Maria, that that I come from a two-income household, and my husband supposedly is a seasonal job and makes too much, and we ourselves even don't make enough to save car payments. One in college, two, one in high school, and one in the elementary, and trying to save because COVID is happening, things happen, and the cost of living is, and I had to move out of both cities and vice versa to see Tiger Tualatin, to see who and where is more affordable. And the comparison to the two cities is something to keep in mind, because some people, because it is a district of Tiger Tualatin, just so you know that it's good to compare both cities and see what one city is doing that can assist the other.
Actually, I am so glad you said that. That was one of the solutions I was going to talk about, is that, housing, I am on the Metro Housing Bond Oversight Committee, and really one of the things I've learned is that, yes, there was a bond passed and there are housing being built in different places, but really the experience of residents who live is, of course, people want to, like, if you've put your roots in Tualatin, you want to stay there. But for a lot of people, I mean, it's a large metro area, so there are, like, we really do need to look at regional solutions, but especially for right there in Tiger Tualatin, Durham, King City, it just seems like there is a nexus of an opportunity to look at solutions maybe collectively and take a more regional approach. So I appreciate that, Veronica, saying. And the other thing I just want to chime in is that I think that's what is interesting about some of the conversation we're having today, is that we're talking about rent burden and how do we reduce that, and that's going to continue to be important. And I'm going to say, please put a focus, laser eye on that. We know from the research that the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard has done that just for older adults, you can expect that the rental, people renting will have doubled in the next 20 years or something. I don't have the exact numbers, but soon it'll be doubling. There are going to be more renters, period. So how are we going to meet that need? Already there, I showed you that slide that said 100,000 rental homes being, not having enough for those extremely low-income families. And then on the other hand, I think the emphasis of really trying to allow and figure out how homeownership opportunities can be had for lower income communities of color is going to be really important, because as we know, homes are sort of that, it's the biggest asset. I know working with older adults, it is, you have a lot of benefits to having a home, and it would be awesome. And I think I have seen some really great programs and organizations in our metro area who are doing really amazing work, like Habitat or Proud Ground, and that'd be awesome. So, sorry.
I'm sorry to break in, but we have another speaker. And we have some very important things to say at the end in terms of how we're going to continue the continuation of how to be involved in this process. So thank you all so much. There's so much richness. You started on a conversation that is huge, and hopefully we'll find a way to continue that conversation. Aquila, I have a question for you. Since you're on next, are you there, Aquila? Do you want to go ahead with your segment, or should we turn it to Catherine and maybe have you and Garrett wrap up together? I'm just not sure how to do it because we've only got 5 minutes.
I think thank you, Karen. I think for the sake of time, it would be great to turn it over to Catherine.
Okay, great. Catherine, are you there? Thank you for waiting through all this time. And Catherine, just one second here. Catherine is a very important person in our community in Washington County. She works for Community Action. Community Action has an enormous number of programs. She's going to talk to you about those. And Catherine, I apologize for not giving your whole introduction, but I want you to speak about the content. So go for it.
Fantastic. Let me share my screen really quickly.
Compartir mi pantalla para que ustedes puedan ver.
Start from here. So, hi, thank you all for having me tonight, and it's been wonderful to hear the other presenters. So I'm Catherine with Community Action, and essentially the ultimate risk of housing cost burden is housing instability and homelessness. At Community Action, we operate and coordinate a range of programs and services which are up on the screen now that are intended to make sure that homelessness is rare, short in duration, and non-recurring. And the safety net services that we offer, like rent and utility assistance, serve as an emergency intervention to bridge the gap between what people earn and what it takes to actually support a family in our communities. More than 1,000 Tualatin residents accessed our services last year before COVID. However, I think we've heard very clearly tonight, most folks would rather not have to access safety net services. Laws like the Fair Housing Act and policies like some of the ones we've been talking about tonight serve as ways to eliminate housing discrimination and keep communities open and accessible to all members of our community, and increase the supply and accessibility of affordable housing so that we can build more stable communities. As Bandana outlined tonight and Africa and Veronica described, the contributing factors to housing cost burden are complex and multifaceted, and so are the solutions. The more we understand about the causes and impacts of housing burden on the people in our community, the better our solutions can be. So thank you for having us all here tonight and being a part of this conversation. And I'll just go back to the services that we offer, and I believe all of this information is in your packet as well.
Pero toda esta información está en sus paquetes.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Gracias, Catherine.
Garrett, I think you're up next. It's Garrett. I do want to say Aquila's information is in the packet, and she has a diagram about barriers and solutions that we worked on last year, and other materials, and we'll do in our post email on this event. We'll try to fill in the gaps of the things that we couldn't cover.
Los correos electrónicos que
Garrett, do you want to give the feedback to Action?
Yep, I'm just pulling that up right now.
We're a little over, so I hope people can hang in there for just a few more minutes and we will conclude.
Espero que nos estamos pasando un poquito. Espero que ustedes puedan esperar.
Okay. I don't know why it's not presenting there. Okay. So, Aquila, do you want to cover this, or do you want me to just speak through it?
Okay. Sure. I'll speak to it really quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you all for hanging in there. And thanks for joining us. So Tualatin 2040 was a project last year that encompassed 3 different efforts with a housing needs analysis, economic opportunities analysis, and then that resulted in a policy priorities document. So those are all very technical actions that took place. We did have a
que
lot
llevamos
of
a
great
cabo
community involvement in that to help
con gran
give some input
participación de
on
la
that
comunidad.
direction. So this year,
Entonces,
the planning
este
department
año,
is working on
el
implementing
departamento
that
de
work, and
planificación
they are
estamos mirando
creating a
cómo
new housing
implementar
chapter for our
SWAP
comprehensive plan,
2040
which
al
basically means
crear
the
un
long-term
capítulo de
policy
vivienda
document for land
para
use.
un plan
And
comprensivo
then
del
with
uso
that, they'll
de
update
los
our development
terrenos
code,
y crear
which
una
regulates
estrategia de
zones in
producción de
development
vivienda
and
y actualizar
will
el
hopefully
Código de
allow for more
Desarrollo
types
que
of
regulan las
housing
zonas y el
to be built
desarrollo
with
de las viviendas que
potentially
se
fewer
van
barriers.
a
And then a
construir,
brand new piece that
y una
we're
parte
embarking on
nueva
that I
que
think we're
estamos
probably the
comenzando.
first ones in the state to do
Somos
is
los primeros
actually a
en
housing
hacer,
production strategy.
es
So that's where we will go through and
crear
identify
una estrategia de
how can we
producción, cómo
encourage
podemos animar
/ partner
a
to have
asociarnos
more housing built
para
in the city.
poder
And
edificar más viviendas
so
en la ciudad.
that will hopefully address some of the feedback and
Y
questions that we got
esperamos
tonight.
que eso va a contestar muchas de las preguntas
Excellent.
y la retroalimentación que hemos
So
tenido esta noche.
So on the website, and we also sent out this link,
Entonces,
we pulled a few
en
snippets
nuestra página
from
web,
the study that Aquila was talking about, that kind of longer term solution of the barriers and solutions to housing. We'd love to hear your feedback on that, or have you provide that feedback directly to the Planning Commission or Council. What do you like that is in there? What's missing? These kind of information is really the feedback that we need to make great decisions and move and get solutions here in our community.
Seguir dando los pasos.
So you also might be asking, what is done with this feedback? How can I be a part of change?
¿Cómo puedo ser
And really,
parte
it's a bit of
del
that
cambio?
kind of be the change that you want to see.
Entonces,
And so on the website, and we've linked it here as well in English and in Spanish, are a few steps that you might be able to do out of this meeting tonight. One of those is to kind of get involved on the longer term housing fix. That's for that Tualatin 2040 project. Another, if you came here tonight and we're looking for immediate need for housing, for rent, or other types of assistance, getting in contact with Catherine and Community Action, they'll be able to provide you kind of what they can do, and not knowing that they won't be able to solve the whole thing, but they are kind of our more immediate resource provider here in Tualatin. Betsy and a few members that we heard tonight talking, like Veronica in Africa, are on our diversity task force. You can join with them on their committee or join as an ally. You can come and speak in front of Councilor Reyes and Mayor Bubenik and our other city councilors every other Monday. And then finally, after this, you'll be getting an email from Washington County. In May, there was a regional homeless services bond that was passed. And so they're looking for input on how to spend that money in the community. So we would love for you to provide your feedback in addition to tonight to that survey. So thank you for joining us for Our Home, Our Health. Karen, do you want to say any final words before we close out?
I just want to thank everyone again. And sorry, I just wanted to thank everyone and just really connect back with us here at the city and also with the panelists that you've heard from. And please stay safe and healthy out there, and stay tuned for more on housing and be part of the solution. Thank you.
Sobre vivienda y formen parte de la solución. Muchas gracias.